Hey, this is Paul Brandreth, and this is the 1002nd album you need to hear. Trouble Will Find Me by The National.
Hi, I'm Jeff Stephen, and you're listening to the 1002nd Album podcast. I spent 10 years going through the 1001 albums you must hear before you die, and now I'm asking people that are important to me all about the albums that are important to them. Enjoy! This is the 1002nd Album podcast. I'm Jeff Stephen. Thanks for joining us. I'm particularly excited for today's show. Although I've been chatting on a weekly basis with this person for the last 5 years or so, I don't think we've actually seen each other in about 20. And this charming man is perhaps the largest single influence on my music collection. So please welcome Paul Brandreth.
Well, that's quite the introduction, and thanks a lot. It has been I think it's been more than 20 years, I would say, probably close to probably around 1988.
Yeah.
Probably maybe started seeing each other across the street.
That's right. I always get a kick out of telling people when they're like, oh, you listen to the Smiths and The Cure and Radiohead, like, where'd you get into that stuff? They're like, oh, my babysitter. And so
Yeah. And, I got into it for my sister. So you almost have to, if you're not going to stumble onto it somehow, you're going to be influenced by somebody, right? So
exactly. And you haven't steered me wrong yet. So I'm very pleased with that. And speaking of which, with your selection for the 1002nd album, it is The National, and it is Trouble Will Find Me. And I guess my first question would be, what was your National origin story? Where were you when you discovered them?
So pretty cool. We had just arrived in Toronto, and we were meeting with my wife Holly, her sister, and her husband. We were going to a Bruce Springsteen concert, and we were just having something to eat and some drinks beforehand. And Tim, my brother-in-law, had the album Boxer by The National playing in there, and I thought, this is really cool, and I was kind of getting into it, and I had kind of just a cool sound to it, a cool vibe, and it reminded me of Bruce Springsteen, some of his slower stuff, like I'm on Fire, whatever it may be, things like that. And I just kind of really started to dig it, and I said, who is this? And he told me. I said, well, I'm going to check it out when I get home. And ever since then, I've really gotten into it.
Nice. And that's not a bad night with getting introduced to The National and seeing the boss.
Exactly.
In one evening.
Exactly, for sure. Yeah. So that was back in 2009.
Nice. No, you mentioned the Gateway album was the Boxer, or Boxer is the name?
Boxer.
Okay. So then my question would be, what is it about Trouble Will Find Me as opposed to one of their other albums as the must hear?
I think it was the song Don't Swallow the Cap.
Yes.
It really it had that sound, that melody, the sad sound that they've become known for. Their name is The National, but their fans like to refer to them as the Sad Dads. They're two sets of brothers among the rest of the bigger band. The lead singer, Matt Berninger, you've got the two guitarists, Aaron and Bryce Dessner, are twins, and then the bassist and the drummer are brothers as well. And then they've got other studio musicians that join them on tour and everything like that. So, but that's the band that they just kind of got me into it. That sound from Trouble Will Find Me. It was maybe not as hard. The songs such as Mr. November, which are on earlier albums, a bit more rock and aggressive, I guess, a bit more aggressive than I would have normally liked. Since I got into them, I have grown to love those songs as well, but it was really that kind of more sadder sound from Trouble Will Find Me, which I really liked.
Nice. As we both gravitate to that sad stuff, what do they call it in High Fidelity, the sad bastard music? And so
right?
Just, the staples. Yeah. Exactly. So I guess so this is my National album Gateway, and now that you've heard the whole discography, is this still a good starting point for someone, or would you recommend? So I always link everything back to the Beatles, I guess, where I love the White Album, but it makes so much more sense if you hear everything leading up to it as opposed to just in isolation. So right. Would you suggest, can you jump in here, or is it better to start at the beginning and work your way through?
I would think it would probably assume what kind of musical style and taste you like. If you're somebody like me, I think this is the ideal album just because of the vibe of it, the mood of it. And the next album afterwards, I believe it's High Violet, and I find even more kind of a little bit darker, slower, but also a great album, like just fantastic as well.
Nice. So you're saying, so you saw the Boss live, and I know you've seen these guys live as well. And I remember I was so happy that when you said you were going to see the National, I was able to say he's gone to the National and sort of
Yes, that's right.
reference Moz. How did these, if these tracks are sort of sadder or more atmospheric, how did they work in the live setting?
Matt Berninger is an incredible frontman. He's got a lot of charisma, and for like for the song Mr. November, you can count on him going down into the crowd with the microphone and singing. And much like Morrissey and Brandon Flowers from the Killers, he doesn't use a cordless mic. He's got a corded microphone. Okay. So there's somebody up controlling, helping to make sure he's got enough cord to get through the crowd. Yeah. And he will grab people's faces, heads, phones, and sing right into them. He's just got such a terrific energy that he really gets into it. And when they performed on Saturday Night Live, they did the song Graceless from this album. And even towards the end of it, he's screaming, even though they're on Saturday Night Live. Right. Like, he just really gets into it, whether it's a huge amphitheater or whether it's a television studio like Saturday Night Live. He just gets right into it. And so I feel like every time you see him, you know what to expect, but you almost don't know what to expect, because he's just gonna go off on his own little things, almost like Gord Downie used to do.
Yeah. And that's it, where it's unexpected, but you know that he's not going to phone it in. You're going to be seeing a show no matter what.
Absolutely. No matter what yeah. And every time I've seen them, it's always been a great experience.
Nice. And you mentioned SNL, and I sort of got that sense when I was listening to this too. So particularly on tunes like Heaven Faced, it felt almost like something that belongs in a TV show or belongs in a film score, that sort of thing. Are there any of those sort of, have any of their tunes been repurposed in that sort of medium? I know the one that comes to mind for me is, did you ever watch Ozark?
No.
So there's a terrific episode where right at the end of the episode, Radiohead's Dex Dark is playing, and it's just it's this beautiful 1 + 1 = 3 synergy, where the scene was already good, but with the right music, it just goes to the next level. And were there any of those national tunes that ended up in that medium?
Yeah, so there's a movie. It's a Nicholas Sparks inspired movie, much like The Notebook. It's called The Choice. Okay. And there's a scene where the one guy is about to have dinner with a lady that he's kind of courting, and she's getting dinner ready, and he goes to check out her LP collection, and he puts on the National, and the song he chooses is Terrible Love. Okay. And I can't quite remember what album that is off of, but it's interesting because in a Lana Del Rey video, yes, who she has said she would love to work with Matt Berninger from the National, she's choosing a song on an old jukebox, and Terrible Love and Fake Empire are two of the songs that you see on the label as she's choosing it, as well as a Bon Iver song up above it. And so there's a really cool connection between them and some others. So it works really, really well in the movie.
Oh, nice. And that was called The Choice, was the name?
The Choice, yeah.
Okay, nice. And I find movies always get enhanced when like the character's wearing a T-shirt of the band you like, or that sort of thing too. So when he finds it in the LP collection, that's brilliant. So, yeah. And that it's an LP too, yeah. So perfect.
Yeah, exactly. It was really cool in that regard.
Nice. And actually that links well to another thing. You mentioned the track right off the bat you talked about was Don't Swallow the Cap. Mm-hmm. And just in that scene there, you mentioned the guy was putting on an LP just in the moment in the scene. And there's a lyric in Don't Swallow the Cap that jumped right off the page for me, where he says, if you want to see me cry, play Let It Be or Never Mind. Right. And so it's sort of a two-part question here. The first one, I'm pretty confident that Nevermind is the Nirvana recording, but Let It Be, I was curious as to if you thought, is he referencing the Beatles, like the 1970 Let It Be, or is there a chance you think he's giving a shout out to the Replacements? I think it was '84, their album Let It Be.
I would think it is the Beatles, just because of that's much like Nevermind, they're really kind of really significant albums and quite monumental pieces of work. So I think that's what he's referring to.
For sure. The
and
which
it's interesting
again,
because one of my friends who I of course got into the National at some point, that's one of the first things he picked up on as well. It was like, oh, this is such a great lyric. It's really cool how he he works that into it. And
I like him already. That's good.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And of course the inevitable second follow-up question would be, so if you take that same lyric, if you want to see Paul Brandreth cry, play blank or blank.
Oh wow. That's a difficult one. I would have to say, you know what, a lot of Taylor Swift's new work, her last two albums, Folklore,
yeah,
and Evermore,
yeah,
are both for me some of her best work.
Okay.
And I am a Swiftie,
as you should be.
Her early country stuff was great. Her pop stuff, the album 1989, for example, I think is some of her best work. That lyrically just incredible, and how she, if you strip it down away from the pop, the sounds of it, and you just listen to the lyrics. When Ryan Adams redid the entire album, kind of in acoustic and a folksy way, that really opened my eyes to her songwriting. So I find that Taylor Swift, her lyrical ability really kind of tugs at me, kind of hits different. So I would say her last two albums are both two albums that really kind of strike a chord with me.
Nice. And I think you saw her as well live, and I gather she's just a performer.
Absolutely. Yeah. We were lucky enough to get upgraded from our seats, so we were second row. We're completely blown away when Amazing. She wandered over towards us a few times. And I've seen a lot of concerts at the Rogers Center, like stadium shows, and she can carry a stadium with the best of them. And in some ways, she's combining the songwriting, the singing, she's playing instruments, and she's got the choreography where she, still an hour and a half into a show, she ends up lining up with her dancers, and she's got a series of steps where she's perfectly in sync with her backup dancers and singers. I'm like, how can she balance all of those things in a huge stadium? So.
Nice. And I guess for me, the only surprise there is that you called it the Rogers Center rather than the Sky Dome.
Sure.
But it's an artist that the more I hear, the more I like. And I understand she's been re-recording her stuff to reclaim the publishing rights for it too.
Yeah.
So it just seems like a proper artist. And it's it's funny, the 1001 book I went through went from 1955 to 2005. So 2005 onwards is still there's a lot of things to catch up on. And
you could probably write another novel based on what's happened since then.
At least another 1001 since then.
So
very cool. I guess the sort of the catch-all question would be, this is the 1,000-second album. Why? Like, what is the sort of the thesis, the conclusion? Like, why is this the album that you must hear?
I think it's by I like to consider the National as the best band you've never heard of. Okay. And that's the way I kind of when people say, who's your favorite, they're right up there as my favorite. And I would say they are the best band you've never heard of. For they've won Grammys, but a lot of people have never heard them. So for me, this is the album that I would play for somebody to try and get into them. So this is the gateway album to get into the National.
And it worked on me too. I think
there you go.
It was, what's the opening track? The Salt. I Should Live in Salt.
I Should Live in Salt.
Yeah. But just when they had that one extra beat in the verses, like, it's just sort of like, okay, that's perfect. I'm in, sold.
Yeah.
So it's nice, and it's nice to have that instant appeal. But then there was no diminishing returns. Like it hooked me right away. But then it helped me. It was just fantastic.
It didn't kind of just climax after the first song, right? It really carries well throughout the album.
And even that the second song, Demons.
Demons.
That one line is just perfection. The what is it? When I walk into a room,
I do not light it up. And then he finishes off. There's a little bit of a pause.
Yes.
He finishes with "fuck."
But it's just such a perfect way to wrap up a thought. And so it's like, amazing. Yeah. Well, I guess that's a pretty strong argument in favor of this album. And for me, it's nice to because I know with your students as well, you probably can always ask them to consider the source, consider the motivation. And here it's like, well, the source is you're like Paul Molitor in the '93 World Series, you just don't miss. And so and the motivation too there is perfect, where it's the best band you've never heard of. So there's no, like, you're just, again, looking to introduce people to something that's just a new favorite, and which is terrific.
Yeah, and you know, I'm a part of a Facebook group for the National, and somebody said, you know, I've just gotten into them. I just turned 30, and she said, you know, the National just hit different when you turn 30. And one of my friends, he commented, he's like, wait until you turn 40.
Yeah. So maybe that works, because I just hit 40 in December. So maybe
there you go.
I waited the exact right amount of time to have the optimal impact.
Yeah, it's going to hit different now.
Well, it's funny. I wish I'd heard about them 2 weeks earlier, because I gather they played at Blues Fest this year in Ottawa.
Then they played it out in Edmonton.
Yeah.
Interesting that they haven't come around this way. I think they're playing a lot of festivals at the moment. One of their managers is actually from Hamilton.
Okay.
And whenever they do tour in, you know, across Canada and the United States, they almost always hit Hamilton. I've seen them in Hamilton twice. Once at the First Ontario Centre, Hamilton Place as it used to be called, and as well as down at Pier 8 down at the waterfront. And they put on a great show. I've seen them in Toronto at the Roy Thompson Hall. And but they always come around here. So I'm kind of waiting for maybe the fall, when maybe the festival season is done, and they're going to kind of come rolling around.
Do their own tour,
Yeah, and if they do, I'll make sure to let you know.
Yeah. And did you say like they've been collaborating with Taylor Swift as well?
Yeah. So back in 2020, right after the start of COVID, Taylor reached out to Aaron Dessner, who is one of the two twin brothers. He plays guitar. He does a lot of musical writing. And I guess Taylor Swift started to come check out the National after they were on Saturday Night Live, and so she would come to their shows whenever she was kind of in the same area. And so she just reached out to Aaron and said, hey, I've got some ideas here. Would you like to try and kind of collaborate remotely? She goes, have you been working on anything? He said, yeah. So we sent her like 6 songs, and almost immediately she came back with a version of Cardigan, which came out on the album of Folklore. And the cool part about it was that he couldn't tell anybody what he was working on.
Yes.
And so it had to be kind of secret, because she was working on the album in secret. And so she didn't want anyone to know. So she basically put out an Instagram post the day before, said, hey, at midnight, I'm dropping a new album. Yeah. And so he couldn't tell his daughter, who was 8 years old at the time. He said, Daddy, do you know Taylor Swift? And he said, I had to lie to her. I had to give her a white lie, and said, no, I don't. No. And then afterwards, of course, it came out that they've been working together. And so if you have, I believe it's is it Disney Plus? There's it's called the Long Pond Sessions, that she got together with Aaron, and then Jack Antonoff, who's done a lot of the work with her in previous albums, and they just sat down at the National's recording studio in upstate New York and just did the album front to back. She talked, they all talked about some of the meaning behind it and how they got to writing each song. And it's an incredible display of talent, not only with Jack and Aaron, but also to see Taylor, really into it. And she's just not the pop star. She looks like almost like a Joni Mitchell style of artist at that time. Yeah,
that's amazing. That's perfect for me too, because I was coming into this hoping for one album, and it's nice that you got a couple in there.
Yeah, and that album actually won Grammy. It won Album of the Year for the Grammys in 2020.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah,
good to know. Nice. Oh, that's awesome. So I guess that's the main. Is there anything else you'd want to say about the band or the album, or let the music speak for itself?
Yeah, I could go on forever, but I'd probably bore everybody. So let's leave it at that, and hopefully people can go check it out.
Awesome. Well then, yes. So thank you so much for your time today, Paul, and hopefully less than 20 years before our next semi-in-person reunion here over Zoom.
No kidding, right? And like I said before, I would do this anytime again. I've always got albums that I think, wow, this is so good, and I wish more people could hear it. And so if you ever want to do it again, just let me know.
Yes, please keep the honorable mentions list handy, because we'll be back. This is perfect.
Fantastic.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Great. Okay, thanks.
This has been the 1000-Second Album Podcast. Thanks for sharing some of your time, energy, and attention with us today. Take care.